Angel, hurry up. Angel, hurry up.
And we are live on Love and
Hey.
Stuff, streaming through Restream on Twitch TV, YouTube, Facebook, and oh, wonderful. We got folks that are joining us from all platforms. Thank you so much. Damari Burns has joined us. Corey Reed, thank you so much for joining us on our multiple platforms. And I am here live with Keila Brintley, who we wanted to
Hi.
bring to you to tell her story and discuss her story. So welcome, Keila Brintley. Thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
coming,
Thank you.
giving us kind of the exclusive. I guess this is your first time really talking publicly about your story. And
It
so
is.
I appreciate you coming on. And tell us a little bit about you. I'm going to double back to all of the platforms. I'm kind of watching everybody. Michelle Pryor has joined us. But tell us a little bit about who Keila Brintley is.
Well, Keila is a mother first. I'm a mother of a 17-year-old daughter. She just graduated this year.
Congratulations.
I'm certainly proud of that. Considering COVID and everything, they were able to have an actual graduation.
Yeah.
So she got to walk across the stage. I work for General Motors. I've been employed there for 23 years. I'm a writer. I also have my own podcast show called All the Way There Podcast. And I just enjoy life. I'm a bubbly person and just want to help people. That's it.
Yes. And I'm so glad that, congratulations, first of all, rearing children, daughters, sons in this time and age requires a lot of prayer.
It does.
Very proud of your daughter. So congratulations. Is she planning to go away to school or what?
I'm not going away. Thank God she'll be going to Oakland Community first for the first 2 years, and then we'll talk about going away. But with COVID, I mean, they'll probably be all at home anyway, a lot of them.
Yeah, some people are still going to the campus, Keila. I don't know. But yeah, a lot of people are going to be doing it from home. It's a new normal, right?
Yes.
And so in your journeys, Doris Graham has joined us. Thank you so much for coming. In your journeys of all of this extraordinary things that you told us about Keila Brintley, and I attest that you're a smart young lady, beautiful person, bubbly person, has been over the course of years that I've known you. But at some point you were in a situation where you had to make some changes. Can you tell us a little bit about, we just talked before we got on air about a situation where you and another friend of yours decided that you were going to make this monumental move. Tell us about that.
I did. So I decided that I was going to leave. Now, when I say I decided, the decision was I was going to leave, but it did not happen right away. Like I didn't go home and pack my bags. Like it was over a course of time of me getting my mind together. Mm-hmm. But it was something that she and I had discussed because we both were in very abusive relationships. Mm-hmm. I decided to leave and she didn't make it. So
and Keila didn't say she didn't make it.
Her husband killed her.
Her husband killed her.
Yes.
And in fact, you shared that her husband killed her, my Lord, in front of the children.
He did. He did. So when I think about stuff like that, I just thank goodness for the prayers, the people who are always out there, watching. Well, not watching, because a lot of people didn't know. I kept it undercover. I know people probably didn't suspect that it was as bad, but people would tell me, you used to smile all the time, you used to laugh, you used to be a sparkle, bubbly person, and that's kind of disappearing. So I'm sure they weren't aware of the specifics, but they knew that things weren't right. But I do thank God for the people who were in my corner, praying for me and helping me along the way.
Yeah. And when you say abuse, Keila, talk to us a little bit about when it first happened. What happened when you say abuse? What happened?
Oh, I can give you a ton of stories, but we will start off, mental, physical, emotional. Sometimes I feel like the emotional and the mental abuse is a little bit worse than the physical. Because you know, the way I think of it, you can heal, a bone can heal, a bruise can heal, but those mind things, they last. You have to really work through those things. It caused a lot of self-esteem issues, depression, and if you don't realize that that's actually what's taking you through that, you kind of suffer in silence.
Yeah. And I just want to delve, if we can, a little bit more into, so when it first happened, now in hindsight, they say hindsight is 2020, right? So maybe there were signs early on. So I wanted to ask you, had you ever seen anybody in an abusive relationship? I mean, we watch it on TV, right? But had you
Right.
ever in life seen someone in an abusive relationship so that you knew this isn't right?
Well, no, not physically. Okay, so I do know that my grandmother, on my paternal side, was in an abusive relationship, but as a child, I didn't know that. She would come over and stay with us, but I didn't see signs. I wasn't aware. When she left, I just thought she was mad. You know what I mean? But there were signs. Signs like anger issues. A lot of people dismiss anger issues. Anger issues can a lot of times turn into physical issues. The putting you down, trying to make you feel like you're not worth anything. Nobody's gonna want you but them. All of those things over time, for some reason, you start to believe it. I don't know why, but you do, for the sake of, trying to keep things whole, and what you think is peaceful in your mind, you start to believe it, and you don't know, it's just a constant tear down.
And so did it start more?
It actually started
verbal, more emotional?
Yes, it was more verbal.
Okay.
And like I said, you don't really pay attention to it, because a lot of times an abuser, what they'll do is they'll put you down, but they'll make up for it so great that you and what I mean make up for it so great is they'll buy you the gifts, they'll take you on trips, they'll tell you how much they didn't mean it. And so a lot of the things that they do, you kind of dismiss the negative part of what they did, because they try to make it up with some type of a gift, in a sense, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It was one of the things I was going to ask you, whether or not after an episode happens, whether or not it was a makeup gift or a trip or even intimacy, to try to convince you that, hey, I didn't mean that.
Right.
And so if you can recall, what were you thinking the first time that it happened? Were you thinking, oh, this was a mistake? He called me, and I don't know, did he call you out of your name and you thought he was just upset?
So the first time it happened, he was actually upset with somebody else. And he was so livid, and I came in to intervene, like to try to diffuse the situation. Well, that was the wrong move. I came in to try to enter, and next thing I know, it all flipped on me, and I looked up and I'm just like, I don't even know what happened. You know what I mean? Like, I don't even know what happened. Now, at this point, there was no physical, but it was so much verbal abuse that by the time I went home, I thought about it, and I'm like, well, maybe he just was so upset, that, and then I'll talk to him about it tomorrow, And then when I brought it back up, he was like, well, I didn't mean what I said, you just caught me at a bad moment. And of course, because I loved him and that's what I wanted to believe, I rolled with it.
And in that moment, I'm trying to fix some echo that they're telling me I'm having. In that moment, though, so you thought, okay, we'll talk about it later. What does that, if you can share with us some of the things that were maybe said, and because I'm trying to get at the emotional part when someone is, humiliating you or degrading you?
Basically, stay in your place. This don't have nothing to do with you. Who are you to tell me you don't control stuff to go around here? If I was gonna listen to you, then I would have asked you. I didn't ask you. And it all don't sound so bad, but it's bad when somebody is upset and you had nothing to actually do with the situation. But those are the little things that start to turn into the bigger things. You know what I mean? Like, it started there, but when I really think back on it, that really was the start of how it started to build.
Yeah.
And
so it built to what? What did it build to?
To more upsetting things. They find out things that are passionate to you. And I'm just gonna say, like, I'm a writer, and who gonna read that garbage? Nobody's gonna read that garbage. And I'm like, okay, well, this is good material. Well, if I was you, I wouldn't put it out. It's stupid. It sounds stupid. And guess what? I folded the book up and put it in a cupboard, and I didn't take it back out. You know what I mean? Because I started thinking, well, maybe it do sound stupid. You know what I mean? Maybe it does. I mean, it sounds good to me, but I can't judge my own work. You know what I mean? So then I kind of hid that part. And then another thing is, isolating you from your friends. I don't like her. Every time she come around, you act different when you're around her. And I'm like, well, she's a good person. Well, I don't like her. And then you start slowly distancing yourself from your friends. That's the isolation type of thing. And the one thing that he could not do was isolate me from my family, because my family is very close. But even in that, there were certain things that I just did not share with them out of the fear of him being judged. So I didn't share anything, but I was hurting inside. Yeah.
And so, Keila, after it occurs a certain number of times, and now it's not a mistake, right?
It's not a mistake.
Do you begin to believe that you have contributed to this happening? Did you ever ask yourself, what did I do?
I did. So I started thinking, maybe I don't say the right things. Maybe I don't wear the right things, and, I started to think I would try to change up, my attire, my dress, but really nothing I ever did was good enough. But I didn't see that until after I left the situation, that nothing was good enough. But there were a lot of times when I would, look back on it, and just all the negativity, all of that is to just kind of keep you suppressed. So you don't filter out, because when you get out in the world, and we'll get to that. That'll probably come much later in the show. You get showered with all of these compliments, and I'm thinking, well, all of these dudes can give me all of these compliments, but I only want them from this one person. You know what I'm saying? So it's got to be true, because he said it. Why did I have to take his word though?
Yeah.
I don't know.
And probably because you were trying to love them. You had put your heart into it. And sometimes I think when we put our heart into something, it's hard to reconcile what is true and what is somebody's maybe warped opinion or someone's sales pitch to bring us down, right?
Exactly.
So I want to go back to that spot right there, because you are and always have been a pretty young lady, Keila.
Thank you.
In my mind, I'm thinking, if he's not treating you right on the face, you already know that you're beautiful. So how do you continue to stay? That's the first thing I'm thinking. And being on the outside, I might think that, right? People that are watching are going to say, people are going to inbox me, Keila, and say, is she single? I get it every show when there's somebody attracted on the show. And so people that are watching might be like, you're kidding me. How could he get in a way that you start to question your validity of everything you brought to that relationship? Were you thinking that while you were going through him saying the writing is not good enough or you're not good enough? Did he ever say you're not good enough?
He never said those words, but his actions.
Okay.
His actions. So I didn't think that while I was in the situation. What I thought was, I need to do everything that I do to make him see that I am right. You know, I jumped over hoops to try to prove to him that I am this glorious person. Like I'm great. I'm a great person. You know what I mean? And I know this sounds dumb, but that's really what I was thinking. I'm like, I'm trying to prove to you, I make sure I cook, I make sure that I clean, and nothing was ever right. But I will say this, I was really, and this is not to dismiss church at all, okay? But I was kind of clouded with my judgment with faith and stupidity. So I decided that as long as I have faith in this situation, it can work. Because when I go to church, they tell me that, you know, you pray and this can work. So I'm praying for this man all the time. And I'm like, Lord, you got to change him, because I don't want to break up, you know, this situation. And I started one day, I just was thinking, like, is this faith or is this stupidity? Because would God actually want me to be going through this? I don't think he would. And then I went to church to pray, and I stepped up out of boldness and was like, I want to pray for my situation. And this one lady turned around to me and said, do you feel like you're doing everything you're supposed to be doing as a woman of God? You know, your prayers, maybe God is not answering your prayers because you aren't doing everything you're supposed to be doing. And that was my complete shutdown of the church. Well, I know that's a negative thing, and I don't want to discourage anybody from church. That's my own personal opinion, my own personal experience.
You raise a great point. Sometimes people in the church aren't as equipped to guide and speak and counsel and coach people in areas that they want to. And sometimes, because we don't have any power anywhere else, Keila, we get to church and we find all the power to preach our gospel to people and say, you should do this.
That is true.
We don't have power on the job. We don't have power in our lives. We don't have power over our children. We don't have power in our relationships. So we take it to the church and we say, this is what you should do. So
right.
I apologize for her. I apologize for that, because I know that there are great godly women in the church who, you know, if connected, may have given you very different advice. You know,
right, exactly.
We make that mistake of, I'm going to give you a word, and we haven't heard. We haven't heard about that word. I want to go to the comments because folks are in the comments. Evelyn Graham has joined us. Michael Flanoyle has joined us. Emmeline King has joined us. Thank you so much. Mercedes Stevens has joined us, and she says they make you feel like they won't do it again. Did you feel like that?
They do. They make you feel like they won't do it again. They apologize profusely. And like I said, it's always followed up with something big. And it makes you feel like it's a promising thing, you know, like, well, you know, he went out of his way to do all of this. He probably mean it. And you just psych yourself out. You psych yourself out. I did not want to be a statistic out here. So I tried to keep everything whole and together as much as I could, but you can't control somebody else.
Yeah. All right. I'm talking with Keila Brintley, and thank you so much. This is her story of surviving and victory is what I call it. Onya Taylor Hester has joined us. Darcel Graham Scott has joined us. Thank you both. Sarah Perry has joined us. Kay Marie has joined us. Thank you all for joining us as we're talking to Keila. Keila, I had asked earlier, had you seen abuse before up front? Do you know if he saw abuse before in his life up front? Did you ever find out whether or not he had seen some type of abuse and maybe was modeling out that abuse?
Now, the model part, I'm not so sure, but he did grow up in a very dysfunctional family. Very dysfunctional. And when I look at that, I'll never forget Bishop Keith Butler saying that when you are getting ready to enter these relationships, you need to check the background of these people. And even though I had spent time with them, you you know, it was like, okay, who doesn't have a love? Okay, let's just be real. I just wanted to be with this man, okay?
Mhm.
So I just was kind of ignoring a lot of things, you know.
And I love that you said that, Keila. I appreciate your transparency because most of us want to find someone who we can love.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes in going that route, we skip over a lot of things
Exactly.
that we probably shouldn't. We might
Mhm.
not find out about the family history, or we might not, pay attention to that uneasy gait or that uneasy temperament because we're okay, well, I know not to do that because he gets upset about that. It's a lot of little things that everybody does, and it's important to hear you say that because everybody wants to look past those things. We
Exactly.
really shouldn't. We really
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't. So I appreciate that. Tasha Green is saying thanks. That's actually not a negative statement. I think she's talking about the church. Some people can see your sadness, not knowing your story, as well as being miserable and want you to stay miserable too. Good point. I
Mm-hmm.
appreciate that. Thank you
That
so
is
much.
true. That is very true.
Beth Mullen says this transparency is needful. That's what I was telling Keila. I think there are so many women out there, Beth, and men, and the reason, and I'll get to that in a minute, who need to hear the story.
Mm-hmm.
Women who need to say, "I'm going to make a decision," and Keela's going to give, I think, something that she shared with me earlier. I think it's great. You got to get you a plan together,
Mm-hmm.
and men need to hear it because there are broken men who don't know how to stop taking their aggression out on women.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm hoping that there is at least one brother that's hearing this that might make a different decision today and say, that brother that Keila is talking about is me.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't have to be you. You can make a change too. So I really appreciate Keela's transparency.
And I think that's where people have to start. You know, you have to admit that there is an issue.
Mhm.
And if you cannot admit, you know, even approaching a situation when trying to save the relationship,
Mhm.
they never thought that they had an issue. So you can't fix something if you don't think it's broken.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that's important.
Yeah, that's very important.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know if there was any alcohol or drugs as a factor in the
No
situation?
alcohol or drugs, just anger issues.
Just anger. Yeah.
Just angry at the world, just angry.
Mhm.
And I know I tell a lot of you know, young women when they're dealing with these situations, sometimes the anger it'll start off being passed off at other people, and
Mhm.
then they'll kind of take things out on you.
Mhm.
And then they're like, well, it really wasn't it wasn't directed toward me. But a
Mhm.
person that loves you, you know, I think of a rose, a delicate flower rose. When you are taking care of a rose and you don't want the petals to fall off, you make sure it's watered, you make sure it's pruned.
Mhm.
A person that loves you is not going to take their anger out on you.
Mhm.
You know, they might get angry, but it shouldn't be directed to you. And I mean, and being angry it's a natural emotion,
Mhm.
but taking it out on people is not natural.
Yeah. And I think most people aren't given the tools to deal with the underlying causes typically of that anger is some fear or some
Mm-hmm.
hurt. And
Mm-hmm.
because we don't really have good tools, haven't been taught good tools, we have to find some outlet. And
Exactly.
unfortunately, it sometimes is the person that is closest to us who we say that we profess to love. And that's
Mm-hmm.
not to condone any abuse. I'm just
Exactly.
saying that at its root, I think anger has hurt at its root. Somebody's
Mm-hmm.
broken
Mm-hmm.
and they're looking for an outlet to stop that hurt. And some
Mm-hmm.
people turn to drugs, some people turn to alcohol. Unfortunately, some people become abusers or
Mm-hmm.
manifest it in
Mm-hmm.
abuse. And so you talked earlier about, him talking about your work.
Mm-hmm.
Did it manifest to verbal abuse in a way that he was calling you out your name? And to the physical abuse, did it go to a level where the authorities ever had to be called? What?
So some neighbors called the authorities.
Okay.
You know, I never called the authorities because I had this idiotic belief that if I was not ready to leave, if I wasn't ready to leave, I was not going to say anything because I knew that they will haul him away and I was going to still be at home. You know what I mean? So I thought I was just sparing some people, you know what I mean? But neighbors have called the cops because they heard situations, and they would call the police over. And I remember a time, you know, the cops coming to my door and asking me, you know, are you okay? All you have to do is, you know, just nod and let us know, you know, you want to be out of this situation. And I'm like, no, I'm fine. And the cop looked at me and he was like, well, do you want to step outside? And I'm like, no, I'm fine. And I just remember, you know, I closed the door, and it was such a weird situation because instead of us talking, he looked at me like, that's what you were supposed to do. And then he went, you know, back to doing what he was doing. And, you know, it just was an ice cold situation. I can even remember some situations where we would all be having like fun, family function fun, and everybody is enjoying each other's company. We're all laughing, and we would get in the car, and I could be still laughing about something that happened, and he would literally turn around and look at me and say, you know, why are you even talking to me? And I'm like, wait, we just left. We just had a good time. I don't understand what happened. And he's like, why are you talking to me? Like, why do you even think you can talk to me? Like, why do you think you can hold a conversation with me right now?
And when he says that to you, Keila, what goes through your mind at that moment? Are you thinking there is some,
I was thinking that I knew it wasn't.
Is he psychotic? Are you thinking, is there some mental, what are you thinking when?
Yeah, I was thinking he had a chemical balance. It was like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, or, you know, it was, but I just would clam up and just take the drive home in silence and just do that, you know. It's such a lonely thing to go through because you don't want outsiders in your situation. So a lot of things are just kept in here. And then you have to still kind of pretend a little bit. So you start playing all of these roles, and then you can't keep up. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And is it that you were embarrassed that you didn't want the outsiders to come in, because you do have a close-knit family and they would have probably helped, hopefully in legal ways, but they might have helped in some illegal ways too. But
I don't even know if it was more so embarrassment, more so than it was, I just wanted to keep things together. I wanted him to just realize that he was not right. And I figured it would take time. And then if I started bringing people in, I figured it would make things worse.
And did you ever say to him, this is not right, you shouldn't be doing this? And what was his response?
He was like, well, I mean, you got options. You don't have to stay. And I'm like, okay, you absolutely right. I don't have to stay. But I mean, I'm staying because I wanted to work. And I know a lot of people be like, I don't understand why these women deal with this abuse and why do you stay? And if it was me, and I always tell people, you know, it's so easy to say if it was you. I'm not condoning anything. I know I should have left. I would encourage anybody that tell me something like that to leave. But my thing is, I was not sharing it with people. So nobody could tell me to leave. You know what I mean? I just wanted things to just eventually work itself out, and it didn't. And, you know, it didn't work itself out.
Yeah. And I want to go back to when the police came after your neighbors called them. Had he hit you? Is that?
Yeah. Oh, it was some serious rumbling and tumbling going on over there. And that's what they heard. And it started out, and I don't remember exactly what the argument started, but it was about me asking him a question about something he felt he didn't want to answer. And I got upset, and I'm like, okay, you know, I'm tired of going through X, Y, and Z. You know, you're gonna either give me the answer, and I'm not saying exactly how it happened because, you know, my memory is foggy, but I just remember that it ended up being a fight, a physical fight. And apparently my neighbor heard all the shouting match, and she heard the fighting, and she called the police. And then she actually came over the next day and was like, are you okay? And I just heard so much stuff going on over here. I got nervous. And I'm like, I understand. I'm like, but I'm fine. But I still, that had happened 3 years before I had even decided to leave.
Yeah. And what does it make you when you're telling your neighbor, I'm fine, but you know that you're not?
I'm just trying to get her to leave. I'm just telling her something just to get her to leave. I'm fine. I'll be fine. It wasn't that serious. You did hear us fighting, but all couples fight. It wasn't that serious. Don't act. Basically, in other words, I didn't say this to her, but in other words, mind your own business.
Yeah. Okay.
That's basically what I was saying.
Yeah. I'm going to go to the comments, but I want you to think about what was the worst thing that happened. What was the worst thing that happened? Tamika Austin has joined us. Walter Holman has joined us. Christina Smith says, I understand. Tamika says, having a solid plan and outside support is extremely important to ensure you can end the relationship safely. Unfortunately,
you gotta have a plan.
Close friend to domestic violence, and looking back, I wish I had been of better assistance. Tasha says, I understand. My question to her is, did she lose herself in this relationship? How long did it take her to find herself again?
I did lose myself.
Great question. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. Thank you, Tasha Green. Kim Wilson has joined us. Thank you so much. Kynitra Gwen, I think I'm saying it, says embarrassment plus shame equals abuse. Okay, thank you for that. My Fam, My Life says, did your daughter ever see the abuse? We'll talk a little bit about that. Lynn Shaw says, did you have anyone to tell during the abuse? And I think, Lynn, what she's telling us is that she didn't really want to tell anybody because she was
so there were people. There were people that I told little snippets to. So like, I have a best friend. She wouldn't know extreme details, but I would, because you talk to your friends, but you make them seem light. And she like, oh, I hope you guys, work things out. But there was one time I couldn't dismiss it because I ended up in the hospital with a broken wrist. And she went down with me. And at that point, the doctor came in and was asking me some questions. And I had did the typical I fell down the stairs story. And when the doctor left out, my friend literally turned to me and was like, you sound like an abused woman. And I'm like, whatever. And I kind of laughed it off. And I'm like, okay, I'm just going to go to work. And I literally typically the next day went to work with a broken wrist and tried to work. And they were like, you can't work with a broken wrist. I work in a factory, if people don't know. And they're like, you can't work with a broken wrist. And I'm like, I'll be fine. I'll be fine. Just find me a job that I could work. I just wanted life to just keep selling. I didn't have to look at the money. I